Hi, welcome to the first video of my channel. I am so excited to start posting videos here on YouTube and try out a bunch of different mediums of art. And this time I really wanted to get into sculpting. So for 1 week, I decided to put all my focus on that specific medium, and here's my documentation of how it went. Day 1. On the first day of this challenge, I made some basic shapes to get comfortable with the clay. My idea going into this was one of those 90s mix and match toys. I wanted to make that so I could place all the different shapes I made onto it. I also really wanted it to have one realistic eye for some reason. First, I cut the block of clay up into a few pieces. You might be thinking this is a simple process, and you wouldn't be wrong, but I spent a lot of time using a scraper to cut my clay, which gave me a cut on my left thumb super early on in the process. But I decided to keep going, even though it burned. I don't know if I could have gotten an infection by doing that, but I really felt badass, I'm not gonna lie. I eventually realized that I had to use a lighter to soften my clay, which made my future clay projects so much easier. It's these tiny little things that told me that starting simple was a great idea. So bam, here's my cube, my bloody pyramid, and a circle. I turned the circle into an eyeball. I also looked at this boring cube for a really long time and decided to make it a cartoony nerd's glasses. I was really proud of that decision. At this point, I felt like I had made enough to start putting everything together. So while I mixed my shapes together, I came up with the bright idea of cutting out some pits from my clay for both of the eyes to fit into, so the final character could look more like a stylized character that was meant to be animated. I also made a hat and extended the glasses a little. And that was it. I was really proud of the outcome, but at the moment I felt like I could do something far more complex than that. Day 2. I was feeling really confident for this day, but it took a lot of time for me to actually get up and get started, which is usually a problem that I face during these art challenges. I started with sculpting. I was using my palm as a reference, as I wanted to sculpt an arm. I'd say the process of making the palm felt alright, but it became considerably more difficult when I actually had to add the fingers that would go on it. Looking at my thumb, I tried to sculpt and add it to the hand, but it looked nothing like my palm. At this point, both of my thumbs were hurting like crazy. Remember, one of them was cut, and it felt impossible to trust the process. So I scrapped the hand and I took a break to let my thumbs relax. So I just came back from my first attempt at trying to sculpt a hand, and I don't think it went that well. It was a pretty stressful experience. It kind of humbled me a little. It was like, man, this shit is easy. Maybe it is, but it wasn't really easy to do today. I'm recording this because I've decided I'm gonna try again, and I'm gonna make sure that I have something done before I go to sleep today, even though I'm like super tired and both of my thumbs hurt. Although I didn't want to sculpt anymore for the day, I remembered the promise that I made myself. So I set aside the idea of making a hand for later and tried practicing sculpting facial features on a block of clay. And I absolutely loved how it came out. On day 3, I wanted to practice making animals instead of body parts since the hand got me so good. First, I worked on an octopus. I've recently been a huge fan of them, aesthetically wise. It was really wobbly and hard to move around, so I kept it sitting on the block face that I made the previous day. Together, they kinda reminded me of Squidward in his house. By the end of that, it was getting late, and I was already tired. But while looking for references for another animal on Pinterest, I saw a reference to Ratatouille saying,
"Anyone can cook, but only the fearless can be great."
and that really resonated with me in the moment, so I made a sculpture of a rat and added a cute little hat to it. After making that rat, I was too tired to make a third animal, so I kinda just sculpted a fish and went to bed. Day 4. On the 4th day, I went out with my old man to buy a wood platform for a bigger sized sculpture. My idea was to make a sculpture of Atlas holding the world, and maybe add Chikawa and his friends chilling around him for comedic effect, I guess. We bought some wires to make an armature and drilled a pole into the planks to support the weight of the sculpture. Coming into the challenge, I felt unstoppable, but looking at the potential height and detail of the sculpture that I was about to make really intimidated me. At some point, I just straight up couldn't bring myself to even learn how to make an armature figure, which really should have been easy. So for this day, all I did was stare at the rig that I promised myself Atlas would stand on.
Spoiler alert, he didn't do shit.
What?
Didn't do shit the next day either.
Oh my
No!
Day 6. So I decided to make a torso, which also honestly felt difficult, but once I actually started working on it, I knew what to do. Throughout my time working on this torso, I realized that sculpting required a lot of bold moves. If you're too scared to make drastic changes to the sculpture, it's not going to be as bold as you want it to be. This time, I looked at Atlas again and just decided to sculpt an eye. Before doing that though, I made some fixes to the torso that I made the day before. Oh, I made it look so much better. The eye was still a really nice sculpture though. I took my own advice and made some bolder decisions in the process. The best part was realizing that I could just fix whatever looked wrong, and I really loved the final product.
So my thoughts coming out of this challenge, I think I made a lot of progress in sculpting. You know, I learned a lot about the human anatomy. I feel like if I were to draw a human body, I'd probably be able to do it a lot better than before. I'm still pretty disappointed in myself for not making the hand and the Atlas sculptures that I really wanted to make, but I do hope that I'll make them eventually and post them on this channel. I don't know when though, so yeah. Although I keep biting off more than I can chew, I still believe that I can do anything that I put my mind to, and I really hope all the videos that I post on this channel going forward are going to reflect that. So please subscribe to my channel. This was a really long video to make. I kind of just started learning Premiere Pro. I got out of my comfort zone for this video, so it took a lot of effort, so you know.